Hello, my readers of research. So, today we are going to talk about reading closely and thinking deeply. The best readers are the ones that read like they're writers. So, we all know that you can't be a reader if you're not working on writing. And so, we do both in this class. And so, when you are reading your research, today, I want you to be thinking about the person that actually wrote the information. Okay? So, today I want to teach you that it's important that when we read nonfiction, that we are aware of how the author chose to write their information. It's important to ask, why might the author have chosen to include this particular bit of information? Or why did the author choose to structure the text in this particular way? What does the author want me to know and think when I read this part of the text? That is the big one right here. What does the author want me to know and to think when I read this text? So here is a sample from Frogs and Toads. It's a book. So we're going to go ahead and read this together. So in and out of water. Frogs and toads belong to a group of animals called amphibians. An amphibian is an animal that can live on land and in water. Most amphibians spend the first part of their lives swimming like fish. As adults, they can move about on land, so they spend less time in the water. Adult amphibians breathe with lungs. They also breathe through their skin. Amphibians are cold-blooded. Their body temperature does not always stay the same as ours does. They are as warm or cold as the air around them. So, this is the cover of the book, but that same selection that I just read is right here. So my question to you is, why did the author choose to put this information first? So why would he want to write in and out of water at the very beginning? So my question that I'm going to ask myself is, could it be the author wants me to think that frogs and toads are more the same than they are different? Could it be that the author thinks all the details about how frogs and toads live won't even make sense unless I first understand where they live? So why do you think the author chose to put this text in the beginning? Why does this information come first? I want you to practice that. So I said, could it be the author wants me to think that frogs and toads are more the same than different? Or could it be that the author thinks all the details about how frogs and toads live won't even make sense unless I understand where they live? So I want you to take a second and I want you to answer that question for yourself. Why do you think they put that information first? And start it with, could it be the author? And then give me your thoughts. So go ahead and pause the lesson and do that quick in your journals. Okay, so let's look at another section. While we read this, you're going to write down as many questions as you can in your journal. So one more time. While we read this, you're going to write down as many questions as you can in your journal about why the author made the choices that they did. No more golden toads. Frogs and toads are important. They eat harmful insects that could destroy crops or carry diseases. Unfortunately, there are fewer frogs and toads than there used to be. Some people think the reason is that houses and factories have been built where frogs and toads used to live. Other people think that water pollution has killed most of the frogs and toads. So what questions did you think about the author's choices? So what questions can you ask about the author's choices? What did you write in your journal? I want you to go ahead and look at that. Make sure that you included some questions. So what do we want to know about the author's choices? Now, I want you to answer your questions. So remember my example, why did the author put that first? My answer was maybe it's because he wanted to show me where the frogs and toads lived before I learned how. So answer your questions. Go ahead and pause the lesson. You're going to answer some of the questions that you wrote down for yourself about the author's purpose. Determining the author's purpose and point of view is another side that we want to look at. So not only do we want to know why they put things in the order that they did, but we also want to know their point of view. So it's always important when we're reading to identify the author's point of view as well as their characters. But in research, it's really important that we know their point of view because we want to look out for the people that are trying to persuade or the people that are actually informing with only facts. In this case, when we're researching about our guinea pig in our classroom, we don't want to know somebody's opinion. We don't want to know what they think we should do. We don't want to know what they think is the best breed. We want to know what really is. We want to know what we really should do. We want to know the facts. We want to know what is the best choice that we can make for our guinea pig because of the facts, not because of some random person and their opinion. So when you are researching, it's very important to understand your author's purpose and their point of view. We need to make sure the author is writing to inform and not to persuade. When we are researching information, we want only facts. So the first thing that we can do to try and help us figure this out is first we can read about who the author is. So typically in a research book or an informational book, there's a bio section in the book. So we can read that and we can get some information about who the author is, maybe what their background is or what they're interested in, or maybe what they went to get a degree in or what they specialize in. Then we're going to think about whether or not that author would try to persuade us on the topic that we're reading about. So in this case, when we're talking about frogs and toads, I don't think there's any opinions in there. And I say that because I'm going to back it up with some support that I didn't see any opinion words popping out at me. So I believe that the author's point of view was to give me information. So these are the opinion words that we want to watch out for when we're reading. Ought to, cause, fault, responsibility, amazing, terrifying, right and wrong, should, deserves, and fair and unfair. So things to think about. When you're researching, you should be thinking about all of your author's choices. But here are some suggestions to push your thinking. What do you know about the author? Think about the facts you found in the book. Why do you think the author included those? When you were doing your cross-text synthesis and you're looking at your different sources at the same subtopics, did you notice whether or not some sources had more facts than the others? Why do you think some of those authors chose to leave those out? Did you find any opinion words in your research? So these are some questions that I want you to write down in your journals because I want you to be working on some of these while you're reading today. So again, I want you to pause the video and I want you to get your journal and I want you to write down these 4 questions so you have them for when you're reading. Today you are going to continue your research on your guinea pig subtopic using this new tool. So today and from now on, when you read, remember that authors do everything for a reason, just like you do when you write. So when you question your author's choices, you are going to understand your book a lot more deeply. So we're always going to push ourselves to think deep. And today we're practicing thinking deeply about the choices our author made to grow their ideas. So when you are reading, you are going to ask yourself the choices. You're going to ask yourself questions about the choices the author made. So again, looking at those 4 questions, try and figure out where your author is going. Or maybe you even want to ask yourself some questions like, why did the author choose to put this information first? So you can ask yourself some questions about the text structure, or, why did they do a compare and contrast here? Why didn't they do a compare and contrast here? And then try and answer it and see what you can do. Or, I think this information would have been better in a sequencing order. Well, why did they choose not to do that? Or maybe you found out that there's other books that put in a lot more information, and you could say, why did they put that information in there? Or maybe one author did put a lot of information in, and your question is, why did all the others leave this out? So I want you to continue to try and ask yourself those questions as you're reading today, and take notes in your journal. And then there is a Google form that you will complete when you're done with your stamina time. Okay, so get your journals ready to stop and jot with your research while you think about these authors' choices.